Welcome to the Connected Campus podcast, where we explore the ways that diverse professionals are working every day to optimize their efforts to recruit, retain, and graduate their students.
I'm excited to be here today to have what'll be our first feature episodes, bringing in members of the Pathify team to kind of talk about who they are and kind of give a little behind the scenes on the folks that make Pathify work and make Pathify happen. So very grateful for somebody who I know we just posted in the feed a little while ago, a rebroadcast episode, who's been in the mix doing this stuff for Pathify before. But we'll start out. Julie, if you want to introduce yourself and give a brief overview of your background, and then we'll kind of dig in a little bit deeper.
Definitely. Hi, I'm Julie Gumerman, and I'm the Senior Sales Engineer here at Pathify. And my background in tech is a little bit unusual and unorthodox. You know, the way sometimes people fall in love late in life and unexpectedly, that is my relationship with tech. So I had started off as a teacher. I taught high school for a couple years. I taught snowboarding for a season. I taught middle school for about 10 years and then kind of burned out like teachers do. And my sister and her husband are both software engineers. And they were like, I think you should try coding. I think you'd really like it. And I was like, I'm ready for anything different right now. I need a break. I need to do something different. And I started coding. I started HTML and I was like, this is really fun. And then I started some CSS training and I was like, this is really, really fun. And then I got into JavaScript and was like, I love this. And so my plan when I left teaching, I was going to go to coding boot camp and then I was going to go hide in a cubicle somewhere and style buttons and never talk to another human being as long as I live. But I taught school for a long time and I really like to talk about ideas. And the CTO here, Chris Hagan, discovered that before he even met me based on a YouTube video I'd done at coding boot camp. And now I'm in sales engineering and can't imagine doing anything else with my life.
Yeah, that's great because I've always had sort of a kind of a fascination or just sort of like really appreciate the kind of mobility sort of option or sort of the opportunity with like the boot camp model, where I've just started to know more people where like, uh, that's been part of their story, like that, like what you said, where it's not, uh, and obviously a lot of people can and do this, like you get out of high school and you're just like, maybe I just want to like kind of make sure I kind of get, very specific skills to get working, and then maybe that job propels me towards further education. But that a lot of folks just, whether they get burnt out or whatever, they can kind of make a quick hard pivot where it's just like, let me just get these skills quick and I want to get into it. So yeah, that's great that that's part of your story. And um I guess then, so that kind of tees up exactly where I wanted to go next, of just sort of like, you could have obviously worked anywhere with these skills. It's part of the beauty of it. How did you find out about Pathify, like that sort of, kind of inflection point for your journey?
There's so many just unexpected pieces of luck that go into my story, and Pathify was one of those. So I had graduated from coding boot camp. It was April of 2020. And I remember the night that I graduated from coding boot camp, if it weren't the middle of a pandemic, I would have gone out with friends in downtown Colorado Springs and we would have celebrated. And instead, it was me running in a snowstorm in my neighborhood wondering what on earth was going to happen because I graduated in a pandemic. But Lambda School, which is the coding boot camp that I went with, had a good success rate of placing job candidates with potential employers. And that is how I met Chris Hagan. And I interviewed with him. I didn't realize he was in Australia when I set up an interview time. So the poor man, it was about 10 or 11 in the morning my time, and it was much, much earlier his time. But he had already, again, seen that YouTube video that I'd done presenting a group project at Lambda School, and we just hit it off right away. And I've been
Yeah.
here for the last 3 years.
Yeah, and I mean that's like most of the time, since there's kind of a long story of Pathify that I'm sure we'll sort of get in bits and pieces from various folks as we get around. But it's like that's like a lot of the time since like they kind of were doing things in Australia, some of the co-founders, and brought it over to the US in like 2017 and everything. So it's like that you're a very long tenured person in the history of Pathify here in the US at least. And I guess as part of it with like that YouTube video, because that seems like that's like a core part of the story. Like, was that even something that you like promoted out yourself, or like do you feel like he just like stumbled across it or something? Like how that kind of got to him?
Yeah. So what had happened was that part of our coding bootcamp experience was that we had a group project called Labs that we were in for 8 weeks, and we had some sort of project that we had to build as a group and do the pull requests and figure out how to run it and the whole thing. And then we did a Shark Tank competition, and my group went to finals, and that's what that YouTube video was. And so I wasn't even looking at sales engineering. I didn't even realize that that was a job or something I might be good at or interested in. It was just, hey, here's my project and here's me presenting it. So let me just present a cool thing that my group made. And Chris saw that and he was like, she's going to be a sales engineer for us. And here I am.
Yeah, well, I guess like the algorithms or something, just like sort of benefited you of just like getting that in front of the right person, and
Mhm.
um, yeah, because I think like with boot camps, like a lot of them will sort of tout where it's like yeah, we got people that work at Google or wherever else, and it's just like yeah, they probably they do that, but then also like there's a lot of companies and different kinds of companies that are looking for qualified folks to do this kind of work. So I guess it's that idea where like it does take maybe somebody who at least appreciates uh, the value of what like a boot camp grad, like what they can offer and everything, and just you know, um, I guess just seeing something in you, and that's like something where like
Mhm.
you know, kind of the happenstance or sort of just like uh yeah, kind of following those sort of cues and everything is kind of just it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, so sales engineer, I'm sure some people are familiar with what that is. That is definitely a new kind of role title for me. What sort of work do you do on a daily basis?
I like to think of myself as the resident nerd for the sales department. If I could put that on my business card, I would, but everyone would think that was odd, so I don't. So, what it is essentially is that I'm the technical strong arm for the sales team. So, they've talked to the right people, they're ready to get the IT teams on, but the IT teams want to make sure of a number of things. They want to see how the technical pieces are going to work, how it goes together. They want to make sure that we're actually legitimate. They want to make sure that we have all our right security measures in the way in place in order to make sure that nothing horrible happens with their data. And so I get to be the person who goes on and talks to them about all of that. And so I do a lot of talk about just how our integrations work, how we do user provisioning. I talk a bit about security. Also, an interesting plot development in this, and why I couldn't do what I'm doing now without having a teaching background, is that my master's was in curriculum and instruction. So I started putting together all our middleware trainings and whatnot. And so as I've gone into the weeds with that, that started to also make excuse me, its way over into tech calls and whatnot in regards to just being able to see, oh, you guys want to see how this integration actually works? Let me show you. Wait, can we see the code for that? Yes, yes, you can. Let's get under that hood and take a look at it.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of that. So I do a lot of scoping of custom work. I do a lot of talking to customers, triaging, getting technical questions answered in pieces like that. And then when I'm not doing things like that, I'm also working on DIY tutorials and training people up in how to use our middleware.
Yeah, and I guess it is like you said, sort of you're uniquely equipped to kind of like, play kind of both sides where you could just sort of be purely like, yeah, here's under the hood and I know all the lingo and how everything kind of happens, but being able to almost kind of like capture that in like an engaging or relevant, sort of way, or sort of a palatable way, even like because it could get sort of, I imagine, sort of wonky or sort of, kind of clunky to be able to kind of teach those things, but it's like, okay, how can I sort of like, encapsulate this so that maybe even like somebody in a non-technical position can kind of appreciate and understand how all this works and can ease any of their concerns or anything like that. So um I feel like we can already kind of get a sense of this, but if there's maybe like even like an anecdote, sort of a memory or whatever that you can think of, like what do you enjoy most about doing this kind of work? Because it does feel like super unique, and like you said, like you can't imagine doing anything else. So like, what are sort of aspects of it, that kind of stand out as some of the most enjoyable for you?
Oh my goodness. The whole thing is just so perfect for my personality because I'm a hardcore nerd, but I am pretty social. And so I'm always getting to talk to new people about new things. Sometimes it's these super nerdy IT groups that really just they've done their own integrations with other systems and they want to get under the hood and they want to see what's going on and how things run and what the options might be for their teams. And so I might be doing that 1 hour and then 2 days later I'm on with an AE and our usual demo person was double booked and couldn't make it onto the demo. So I'm explaining to the communications group how our communications platform work and they're not technical at all. And so it's a completely different audience, but it's the same product just through a different lens. There's always just some new adventure to go on, whether it's talking to people or scoping out something new.
Right, like there's just a very dynamic nature to the job in that sense, and then like I guess it's like helping people connect dots, like kind of like you have those sort of aha moments where it's like, oh, okay, now I see. Because I could just be like, I don't know, this feels a little too good to be true or something. Like I don't like
Mm,
how great is this really? Um,
yeah,
uh, and I guess I'm curious, maybe like an aspect of this too, because I think a lot of people came in without sort of like like you had worked in education before. I think there is certainly a lot of people where it's just like a core part of their being that they feel very drawn to working in the education space in some way or another. So like, does it sort of take a different uh kind of like does it sort of like reshape the experience to an extent, knowing that like at the end of the day you're doing all this and it is you know impacting students and helping to sort of augment these higher institutions? Like, does that sort of resonate with you in any way?
that does resonate with me simply having worked in the education space for so long and also being a lifelong learner and having a master's plus 12 and everything like that, really seeing the impact of what we can do and how it would have related to me back when I was in college. But also, I just really feel passionate about making sure that people know exactly what they're getting, whether it's DIY tutorials or explaining to people how our communication aspects of the portal actually work. I just feel like it's really important for people to know what they're getting and to explain it. So I feel like I'm always teaching. It's just in a different sphere.
Hmm. Well, and I guess I'd mentioned it before where you have done like, podcast interviews and I mean you've done webinars and things like that. Like, and I guess that's part of the sort of like dynamic, sort of nature of the work. Like, are those kind of things like things that you definitely like raise your hand for? Like you sort of are just like, I'm here for it. Like I'm happy to do as much of those sort of things like as possible.
Now it is. When Chris on our first interview mentioned sales engineering, I didn't want to say no over my dead body, but I think I might have been like, uh-huh, uh-huh. And now I'm like, oh no, sign me up. This is my favorite thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that like there is, I would say I'm definitely in that camp a little bit, but now sort of like, you know, working in the position I'm in now, where it's like broadly under the revenue team, and like having to kind of think in that way of like, oh, like the leads we're getting and how we're working them, like what content we're putting out when, all this sort of thing. Like, I certainly would have been like, oh, do you want to be a like, you know, um, I guess it would probably like be most related of like sales enablement in like where it's like, oh, you're creating content, but it's like helping with this sort of thing. I might be like, but like the title, it says sales. I don't know. Like, so I can get that, but I think it like looking at it in such a different lens where you're like, I guess especially for you, like you're very much supporting the efforts of other folk, where like by the time it gets to you, like they've maybe like done all the kind of heavy lifting of kind of like, kind of warming them up to understanding like what is Pathify, why Pathify, and all that. And then you're just sort of like uh sort of sealing the deal, I guess, to an extent of like feeling like, okay, by this point you're probably kind of bought in to some extent. So um I'm sure it's, yeah, just like a little bit different where it's not so, what people think of kind of in a negative connotation of sales.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't have to drum up the excitement. If I had to be that person, I would not enjoy what I did and I would probably go crazy and then find a job where I could actually sales engineer. But historically also, I've really enjoyed being the right-hand woman of you guys can do all the planning and I will come in and I will back you up and I will make you look really, really good. And that's always been something that I've done well at with whatever job that I work. And so again, it's a perfect fit.
Yeah. And I think the other part of it is like for the first time ever, I worked a booth like my first week here at Educause, and that was like a very different experience. So like I thought it was pretty good because I at least I think was like the front line of like giving like the elevator pitch, and then if they're like, oh yeah, tell me more, I have these questions, or like, can I see it, whatever, be like, and I'm gonna like send you over to my friend over here, like so I
Mhm.
could just sort of like meet a lot of people, and be like, oh cool, you work there, like tell me more about that or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you kind of find like, ideally, I guess, like what sort of like piece of the pie maybe, is just what's going to be like most ideal. And, I think they say that a lot on this team, which is very refreshing, where it's like, yeah, we want to like do everything we can to sort of like put people in positions where they're doing work that they are like good at, but enjoy. And, certainly just like choosing to work in a tech company. It's like, you can also kind of have your heart in it a little bit more of knowing that you're,
Mhm.
supporting these institutions and their students and everything. Um, so as we're kind of wrapping up and everything, what are you looking forward to with your work? I mean, you've been part of the team for a long time, so you've kind of seen, you've seen it all, I guess, from a certain perspective. But like, what are you looking forward to with your work? Kind of just maybe looking ahead to like, this next year.
Mhm. Well, in the next few weeks, I have a series of tutorials that I need to film, and so I need to write the code and correct the code and do the filming and then get someone to do the editing, and so that's always really exciting, but honestly, I'm just really excited to see what's around the corner. There's just always something new and exciting to be working on around here.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of for folks who don't know like the lingo, like sort of the like sprints of like development, like it's sometimes where it's just like there's always something kind of new and interesting coming out, even if it's just sort of like a small little like quality of life improvement for the platform, or
Mhm.
they're like testing and kind of doing like version one of like a new feature. It's always like like, ooh, cool, like let's see how this all works and all that.
Oh
So
my
yeah.
Yeah, oh my goodness, Dustin. I never thought that I'd cry happy tears during a sprint demo, but I definitely did it on Wednesday because there were two pieces that I was really, really waiting for, and I knew they were coming, but I didn't realize it was going to be Wednesday. So we now have global resources, which has been Chase, the CEO's pet project for years, and it finally got put in place. It's just like, oh my goodness, it's finally here. And then we also got an event listener for user provisioning, which is something that I didn't think we'd ever actually get. And it's ready to go. And so now we have API provisioning options for customers. And again, it's just like, oh, can't believe it's actually happening. I never thought I'd see the day.
Yeah. Well, I guess especially for like, folks like in your position that have been on the team, because like having even just like a very small glimpse into that world, and even just like my prior positions where like, you've just got this like laundry list of just all these sort of feature requests and, whatever. And it could just be where it's like, things just kind of shift around priority, or, for many different reasons. And it could be where it's just like, man, yeah, this has been like, we've really wanted to do this for a long time. And it's like not like crucial, but it'd be so cool if we could. And it's always maybe kind of getting knocked down the list. So it is, yeah, it
Mhm.
was like emotional when like it's like we finally did it, we finally got it, just like cross it off. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then it ties back into the relationships with coworkers because then you get to track down the couple of the AEs and be like, "You'll never guess what we just got. Can we rework this in the RFP? You'll never guess what we just got. We're never gonna have to skirt that question on calls ever again." And it was just really exciting to be able to participate in that somehow.
Yeah. Well, and I guess even, yeah, just like for like looking forward to things at work, we're just like, and that'll probably happen again in a few months or so, like some other amazing
Mhm.
feature will finally come, to see the light of day. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, always cool stuff going on like that. And, yeah, I mean, with like kind of a tight knit team too. Yeah. It's like, that like, hey, yeah, I know like you were like one of the people who kind of requested this, or, kind of brought it up or something.
Mhm.
So, we can kind of just like tap them on the shoulder. So, uh, yeah, but we'll leave it there. And yeah, just appreciate you so much for obviously all the work you do on the team, and for jumping on to talk a little bit about it and your background and everything. And we'll have ways for folks to connect with you on LinkedIn if they would like. We'll obviously just make our folks on the team available to reach out to if part of their background or the work they do is interesting. You might want to talk about it. But yeah, just thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Connected Campus. Please leave a 5-star review for the show and share it so others can discover us. Make sure to also subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Connected Campus.